Hey, what's up? It's Sifu Kuttel, and welcome back to another video with the Tai Chi Flute. Today we're going to be focusing on 3 fundamental blocking techniques. Now I am going to add a kick at the end because I want you to do something after your blocks, but if you haven't already checked out my other video on the Tai Chi Flute and our 3 fundamental strikes, I suggest you do that as well, and then you can combine these techniques together and you can explore trying different directions and pretty much develop a form of your own. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to blocking. Now before we get into this technique, I want to make sure that we have a proper grip. Don't grab all the way at the bottom of the flute. Yes, you will have more reach this way, but you're going to have a lot more leverage against your own wrist. So you have to have a very strong wrist to handle this technique. Otherwise, it's better to grab a little bit up because now we have something else that we can use for blocking and we can use for striking. Now, people will argue and say if they can control underneath, it's easy to disarm. Doesn't matter if they're underneath or over, if they're by your hand, they're going to have control of the weapon anyway. So whether or not you want to have a little more exposed is not going to be that big of a deal, but I find it much easier to use and much more practical to have a little bit more behind the hand as well as in front of the hand. Now, of course, we're not going to try to force and grab at the balance of the weapon. We still want weight towards the front so it has some extra momentum in striking and, of course, in blocking. Now, as we block, I want you to think of blocking from about the middle of the weapon down towards the hand, because this is going to have much more structure. If you're trying to block towards the top, it's very easy to fight against your own wrist, so it's very tough to manage that leverage. However, it is still possible. It's just better to block more towards the center. You have much stronger control. The last thing is, whenever we're blocking, especially with our first couple techniques, you're going to notice that it has a slight angle to the flute. You want to always try to think of keeping the tip of the flute at the center line of your body. Okay, so if I block and I move my hands too far out to the side here, I am now completely open for attack. Whereas if I keep the tip of the flute more forward, it's less available for an attack. There's going to be an obstacle in my opponent's way, and it's much less room for me to react whatever block I have to follow up with after that. Okay, so just think you're making a triangle position. The tip of the triangle is going to be face level, and then as this comes down, you can see where the angle is there, and then across the body is fine. Okay, so let's go get to it. Now that we know how to hold the flute and making sure not to go too far past the body when completing our blocking techniques, I do want to mention one more thing before we get into the technique itself. This employs a very useful combat concept. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is moving forward while blocking, and usually people think of blocking as only being a retreating type of technique. This is something you want to train out of your mind, and that's why we practice moving forward with these blocks, because of 2 things. One is we're limiting our opponent's range of motion. We're limiting their distance. We're essentially stifling the technique. They cannot get a full swing forward if we're already pressing forward here. It's going to change their posture, and it's going to stop their strike before it gains too much momentum. The other thing is it's the mental training on the form. So if you're practicing moving forward here, you're essentially slowly getting the body used to moving forward with blocking techniques. If you think about what you're doing while you're practicing, it's much more easier to employ when sparring. Okay, so let's get to it. We're going to start from a 3rd line position. We'll keep it simple. And then you can already pivot out your foot. So we're just going to advance forward into like a cat stance position, okay, or an empty stance here. And then I'm going to come across and block. So notice right here, I keep the tip of the flute head level, and then the hand is going to remain right about solar plexus level. My other hand is going to meet at the wrist just to keep some structure. This is similar to when we do grasp bird's tail and we're doing the press technique. Okay, so again from here, we're going to shift the weight over, light step forward. I'm still light on this foot, and then I'm going to block 1. Now from here, I'm going to put the foot down. But as I do it, I want to rotate the foot out to a 45 degree, and then I'm going to come across and block 2. Okay, so again, we have 1 here, keeping the hand where it is, 2, and blocking to the other side. So notice we have 1, 2 here. An idea should be a slight push forward. So to put your palm behind it and extend more outward as you do this. Okay, so again, from my balance position, or my third line position, I'm going to step 1, put the foot down, 2. Now from here, I'm going to do a more hard striking block or a chopping block. This could be used if somebody is trying to attack and they're very close and we just want to hit at the wrist here. This can be used to hit somebody's weapon, disarm them, or if they try to grab onto our hand, we're moving them across the body. So we're taking away their technique from us. You can also use this as a strike itself. Okay, so we're going to come across at the same time. I'm going to twist my foot. So now I'm going to turn my body. This one we want straight up and down. It's not going to keep the initial 2 blocks that we did where the tip is pointing forward. So we're going to chop in hard for this one. And we want to follow up with a nice heel kick. Okay, so let's work on that again. We have from our third line position, shift the weight over, pivot the foot, and we have our first block. Turn the foot out, second block. Now twist forward as we chop into it, and then we're going to follow up with the heel kick. Okay? Once you get comfortable with this, it's really good to employ a little more power. Okay? So if I'm facing this way, I'll do it slow one more time. I'm going to come across 1, put the foot down, 2, twist the foot forward, and then kick. Okay? Now, like I said, you do want to start employing a little more power so you get comfortable what this would feel like if you were actually doing it. Okay? And this is also a really good way to understand where you should put emphasis on certain moves when you do them slow. Because I can simply make this position with a bad grip, with no intention in my hand, and just sliding this into position as if I'm putting it on a rack or something. But if you think of it as a block and you get used to putting power in at the right time, oh, I understand I need to block here, then when you move slow, you actually do this as it's intended to be done, as a blocking technique. Okay, so there you have it. There's our 3 fundamental blocks. Now, it's important to keep the idea of having a triangle in front of you so you never let the tip of the flute go too far out of the way, because that's going to allow an opening for your opponent to attack. So as long as, even though you're blocking here, as long as the tip of the flute is still forward, you can still have something between you and your opponent. Okay, so practice this, work with the other video like I suggested, trying to explore with different techniques for striking. You can also try different strikes, high and low, and different blocks with the same idea, high and low as well. You can block and strike this side, then turn around, block and strike this side. You can play with different types of footwork and develop your own form. Okay, so if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, and as always, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, this is Sifu Kuttel.